January 20, 1945. 0843 hours. SHAEF Forward Headquarters, Versailles, France. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands alone in his office, staring at a wall map of Belgium and Germany that's covered in red and blue markers. Red for German forces. Blue for Allied, and right now, there's far too much red. The Ardennes Offensive, what will later be called the Battle of the Bulge, has torn a massive gap through American lines. German panzers have driven 50 miles into Allied territory. Communication between American armies north and south of the breakthrough is severed. The front is chaos. Eisenhower has just made the most controversial decision of his command. He's given Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery control of all American forces north of the German penetration. The U.S. First Army under Courtney Hodges. The U.S. Ninth Army under William Simpson. Over 300,000 American soldiers. Now under British command. It's supposed to be temporary. A tactical necessity. With communication lines cut, someone needs to coordinate the northern response, and Montgomery's headquarters has the infrastructure in place. That's the logic. That's the justification, but Eisenhower knows, everyone knows, this decision is going to cause problems. Because Montgomery isn't just any British commander. He's the victor of El Alamein, the hero who drove Rommel out of Africa, the general who believes, truly, deeply believes, that he should be running the entire Allied effort in Europe. And now Eisenhower has just handed him 300,000 American troops. His chief of staff, Walter Bedell Smith, enters the office. The order's been transmitted. Montgomery's assuming command within the hour. Eisenhower doesn't turn from the map. Did you emphasize the temporary nature of the arrangement? I did. Montgomery acknowledged receipt. Acknowledged. That's not the same as agreed. Smith doesn't respond. What can he say? They both know Montgomery will interpret this handover however serves Montgomery's interests best. How long do we estimate before communications are restored? Eisenhower asks. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Then we get the armies back in 3 weeks maximum. Make that clear to Montgomery's staff. This is a battlefield expedient, not a command reorganization. Yes, sir. Smith leaves. Eisenhower remains at the map, studying the red markers representing German divisions that are finally being contained, finally being pushed back. The Bulge is collapsing. The crisis is ending. Soon, very soon, he'll need to reclaim his armies and drive into Germany. But first, he has to deal with Montgomery. He doesn't know it yet, but that's going to be harder than stopping the German offensive. 60 miles north, Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery stands in his command caravan, reading Eisenhower's order. He reads it twice. Then a third time, then he smiles, all American forces north of the German salient. Under his command. Effective immediately. Montgomery is 57 years old, a veteran of both world wars, a meticulous planner who believes wars are won by careful preparation and overwhelming force applied at the decisive point. That he also believes, completely, without doubt, that American commanders are reckless amateurs who waste lives through aggressive tactics and poor planning, and now he's been given command of 300,000 of them. Vindication, his chief of staff, Francis de Guingand, enters the caravan. The order came through, sir. First and Ninth Armies are now under your operational control. Excellent. Montgomery's voice is crisp, confident. Send orders to Hodges and Simpson. I want full situation reports within 2 hours. I want defensive positions strengthened. And I want it made clear that aggressive action requires my personal approval. De Guingand hesitates. Sir, the Americans have been conducting counterattacks for. I'm aware. Montgomery cuts him off. And those counterattacks have been poorly coordinated and expensive. That stops now. We consolidate. We defend. And when I judge the moment right, not before, we attack with proper preparation. Sir, General Eisenhower's order specified this as a temporary arrangement. Montgomery waves dismissively. Temporary arrangements have a way of becoming permanent when they work. And this will work, Freddie. The Americans need proper leadership. They're learning that now. De Guingamp says nothing. But he's worried that he knows Montgomery. Knows the Field Marshal's absolute confidence in his own judgment. Knows Montgomery believes this isn't temporary at all, it's the beginning of the command structure that should have existed all along. Montgomery walks to his situation map. The German salient is already contracting. American forces, those same reckless Americans, have held Bastogne, blocked the German advance, and begun pushing the panzers back. But Montgomery doesn't see it that way. He sees Americans who got themselves into a crisis and now need British leadership to get out of it. Draft a press release, Montgomery says suddenly. Sir? I want the press to understand what's happening here. How British and American forces are working together under unified command to contain the German attack. Make it clear I've assumed responsibility for coordinating the northern response. Sir, perhaps we should wait until, draft it, Freddie. De Guingamp leaves the caravan. Behind him, Montgomery studies the map, already planning how to make this temporary command permanent. Eisenhower gave him 3 weeks, Montgomery is going to use them to prove he deserves these armies forever. January 7, 1945. 1,100 hours. Montgomery's headquarters, Zonhoven, Belgium. The room is packed with journalists, British reporters, American correspondents, wire service photographers, radio broadcasters. They've been summoned on short notice for what Montgomery's staff described as an important briefing on Allied operations. What they're about to witness will nearly destroy the Anglo-American alliance. Field Marshal Montgomery enters precisely on time, immaculate in his tailored uniform, his beret worn at the regulation angle. He moves to the podium with the confidence of a man who believes he's about to set the historical record straight. The American journalists lean forward. They've heard rumors that Montgomery now commands U.S. forces in the north. They want details. Montgomery begins. Gentlemen, I'd like to discuss the recent operations in the Ardennes and clarify certain misconceptions about the command arrangements currently in effect. He's speaking in that clipped, precise tone he uses when explaining things to people he considers less informed than himself. Which is everyone. When the German offensive began on December 16, the American forces in the north found themselves in a difficult situation. Communications were disrupted. Command and control became problematic. General Eisenhower, quite correctly, recognized the need for unified leadership in the northern sector. A pause. Deliberate. Theatrical. He therefore placed all forces north of the breakthrough under my command. The American 1st and Ninth Armies are now operating under my direction. The American journalists are already scribbling furiously. This is news. Big news. But Montgomery isn't finished. I must say, the situation I encountered was rather untidy. The Americans had been hit hard, understandably so, given the circumstances. My first priority was to restore order, to stabilize the line, to ensure we weren't going to lose any more ground. He's smiling now. That tight, self-satisfied smile that makes even his own staff uncomfortable. I took certain steps. Redeployed forces. Strengthened defensive positions. Applied proper tactical principles. And I'm pleased to report that the situation is now well in hand. A British reporter raises his hand. Sir, are you saying you essentially saved the American armies from disaster? Montgomery doesn't correct him. I would say that the employment of British reserves and the application of proper command discipline at a critical moment helped stabilize what was becoming a very dangerous situation. The Americans fought with great courage, that's never been in question. But courage without coordination is insufficient in modern warfare. The American journalists are staring at him now with expressions ranging from shock to barely contained fury. Did Montgomery just claim credit for saving the American armies? One American correspondent stands. Field Marshal, are you suggesting American leadership was inadequate during the initial German attack? Montgomery's response is measured. Carefully phrased. Devastating. I think the American commanders did the best they could with the resources and experience available to them. War is a learning process. Not everyone has had the benefit of the extensive combat experience we've gained in the Mediterranean and Northwest Europe. He just called American generals amateurs. On the record that I in front of international press, another question, this time sharper, will you retain command of these American armies? Montgomery's eyes light up. This is the question he wanted. That decision rests with General Eisenhower, of course. But I think it's clear that unified command in the North has proven highly effective. I would be prepared to continue in this role if asked. Indeed, I believe the principle of single command under one strategic leader is essential for the final drive into Germany. He's not just talking about the First and Ninth Armies anymore. He's talking about commanding the entire Allied ground effort. Every American in the room understands exactly what Montgomery just proposed: British command over all Allied forces for the remainder of the war. The press conference continues for another 20 minutes. Montgomery discusses tactics, logistics, future operations. But the damage is already done. The headlines are already written that evening. CHAEF headquarters, Versailles. The first reports reach Eisenhower around 1800 hours. His public relations officer, Brigadier General Thomas Davis, enters his office carrying a sheaf of wire service bulletins. His face is ashen. "Sir, you need to see these." Eisenhower reads the first headline: Montgomery assumes command of U.S. armies in North. British Marshal credits intervention for stabilizing Allied line. He reads the second: Montgomery suggests permanent command change needed for Germany offensive. He reads the third: British commander, American forces, untidy before his arrival. His jaw tightens. He sets the papers down very carefully. He held a press conference. "Yes, sir. This morning. Full international press corps." And he claimed credit for rescuing American armies. In so many words, yes sir. Eisenhower stands, walks to his window. Outside, staff officers are crossing the courtyard, unaware that the Allied command structure is currently imploding. "Get me Bradley on the phone. Then Patton. Then prepare a message to Montgomery." "Wait, scratch that. I'll handle Montgomery myself." Davis hesitates. "Sir, there's more." Prime Minister Churchill is reportedly furious. He's drafting a statement to clarify Britain's position. Churchill's furious at Montgomery? "Yes, sir." Apparently the Prime Minister believes the Field Marshal's comments were, quote, catastrophically unhelpful to Allied unity. Eisenhower almost laughs. Almost. When Winston Churchill, Britain's own Prime Minister, is angry at Montgomery for making Britain look bad, you know the situation is unprecedented. "Sir," Davis continues quietly, "the American press is demanding a response. They want to know if you're planning to leave U.S. armies under British command permanently." The answer is no. I gave Montgomery operational control during a crisis. The crisis is ending. So is the arrangement. When? Eisenhower looks at the map on his wall. At the Bulge, which is collapsing faster than anyone expected. At the markers showing American forces pushing the Germans back without much help from Montgomery's proper tactical principles. Soon. Very soon. But first, he needs to do damage control. Because Montgomery hasn't just embarrassed the Americans. He's threatened the entire alliance. And Eisenhower is the only person positioned to hold it together. January 8, 1945. 0820 hours. 3rd Army Headquarters, Luxembourg. General George S. Patton Jr. is reading Montgomery's press conference transcript when his aide enters the office. Patton doesn't look up. He just keeps reading, his jaw working, his face darkening with each paragraph. When he finishes, he sets the paper down with exaggerated care. Then he stands, walks to his desk, and picks up the telephone. "Get me Bradley. Now." 30 seconds later, Omar Bradley, commander of the 12th Army Group, is on the line. "George, I assume you've seen that limey son of a bitch." Patton's voice is cold fury. "That pompous, preening, credit-stealing bastard. Brad, tell me Ike isn't seriously considering leaving 1st and 9th Army under that." "George, calm down." "Calm down? Montgomery just told the entire world that he saved our asses. That we're incompetent children who need British nannies to win our battles. And you want me to calm down?" Bradley's response is measured, but there's steel underneath. "I've already spoken to Ike. He's handling it." "Handling it how?" "By letting Montgomery keep our armies. By proving to the world that the British are right, that Americans can't command at this level." "George, I'll tell you what I think, Brad. I think if Ike leaves American soldiers under British command one day longer than absolutely necessary, he's betraying every man who's died under our flag. And I think Montgomery needs to learn that we didn't cross the Atlantic to be lectured by someone who couldn't beat Rommel until we gave him enough supplies to outnumber the Germans 3-1. There's a pause on the line. "Are you finished?" Bradley asks quietly. "No. But I'll stop talking because I like you, Brad, and I don't want to say something I'll regret. But you tell Eisenhower this: if 1st and 9th don't come back to American command within the month, I'm requesting reassignment. I won't serve in an army where political considerations trump military necessity. That's not what's happening." "Then prove it. Get our armies back." Patton hangs up. He stands at his window, looking out at the Luxembourg streets where his staff officers are moving between buildings, coordinating the Third Army's drive toward Germany, his Third Army, which has been pushing the Germans back relentlessly while Montgomery sat in the north talking about proper tactical principles. His operations officer, Colonel Halley Maddox, appears at the door. "Sir, the latest intelligence estimates are ready. The German 7th Army is collapsing. We could push through to the Rhine within." "Do you know what Montgomery said about us?" Patton interrupts. "Sir? He said we were untidy. That we needed British leadership to sort us out. That American courage without British coordination is insufficient." Maddox doesn't respond. What can he say? "We're about to close the Bulge from the south," Patton continues. "We're going to trap whatever's left of the German offensive. We're going to do it faster and with fewer casualties than Montgomery's methodical, set-piece battle approach would ever accomplish. And when we do, I want photographs. I want battle reports. I want documentation. Sir. Because when this is over, when the history is written, I want it crystal clear who saved who. And it sure as hell wasn't Montgomery saving the Americans." Simultaneously. 21st Army Group Headquarters, Belgium. Major General Francis de Gingand is having the worst morning of his military career. He's just received 3 messages in rapid succession. One from Churchill's office, demanding Montgomery issue an immediate clarification of his press conference remarks. One from SHAEF, informing him that Eisenhower expects a personal explanation from Montgomery regarding public statements that undermine Allied unity. And one from the British press, reporting that American newspapers are calling Montgomery's comments an insult to U.S. forces, and demanding his removal from any command authority over American troops. De Gingand finds Montgomery in the map room, calmly reviewing intelligence reports. "Sir, we have a situation." Montgomery glances up. "The press conference?" "Yes, sir." "The reaction has been extremely negative." "Negative from whom?" "From everyone, sir. The Americans are furious. The Prime Minister is demanding clarification. General Eisenhower has requested. Freddie. Montgomery's voice is patient, as if explaining something to a child. The Americans are always emotional. They'll calm down once they realize I was simply stating facts. Sir, with respect, they're not viewing it as facts. They're viewing it as an attempt to claim credit for their victories and diminish their commanders. If that's how they choose to interpret accurate battlefield reporting, that's their affair. De Guingand takes a breath. He's served with Montgomery for years. He's loyal. But right now, he's watching his commander destroy the Allied coalition through sheer arrogance. Sir, Churchill himself is asking you to issue a statement clarifying that American forces fought with distinction and that their commanders performed admirably. Did they? Sir? Did American commanders perform admirably? Montgomery sets down his reports. Because from where I stood, Freddie, American dispositions in the Ardennes were sloppy. Their intelligence missed a major German buildup. Their initial response was confused and poorly coordinated. These are facts. They're facts that don't need to be shared with international press during an active operation. Montgomery waves dismissively. The truth is always appropriate. If the Americans are embarrassed by the truth, perhaps they should focus on improving their performance rather than worrying about public relations. De Guingand realizes he's losing this argument. He tries a different approach. Sir, General Eisenhower is reconsidering the command arrangements. That gets Montgomery's attention. What do you mean? I mean he's considering returning 1st and Ninth Armies to American command earlier than planned. That would be premature. We're still conducting operations in the north. Operations that American forces are largely executing themselves, sir. The Germans are in full retreat. The crisis that justified the command change is over. Montgomery stands abruptly. The crisis is over because I imposed proper order. Remove that order prematurely, and we risk another breakdown. Sir, if we push this issue, we risk something worse than a tactical breakdown. We risk breaking the alliance. Don't be dramatic, Freddie. But de Guingand isn't being dramatic. He's being realistic. He's watched Montgomery's press conference statements spread through military channels. He's seen the reactions from American officers. He's read the messages from Churchill, from SHAF, from British commanders who understand that Montgomery has just handed ammunition to everyone who believes British and American forces can't work together. Sir, I strongly recommend you draft a clarification statement. Emphasize American courage and competence. Thank General Hodges and General Simpson by name. Make it clear you view this command arrangement as temporary and that American forces have performed superbly. Montgomery considers this. For a moment, de Guingand thinks he might actually listen. Then Montgomery shakes his head. I won't retract accurate statements to soothe American egos. If Eisenhower has concerns, he can raise them through proper military channels. I'm not conducting my operations based on press reactions. De Guingand leaves the map room knowing he's failed. Montgomery is going to force this confrontation, and Eisenhower, diplomatic, patient, alliance-focused Eisenhower, is going to have to choose between keeping the coalition together and keeping Montgomery happy. De Guingand knows which choice Eisenhower will make. Montgomery, apparently, doesn't. January 16, 1945. 1430 hours. SHAEF headquarters, Versailles. Dwight Eisenhower sits across from Winston Churchill in the most uncomfortable meeting of the war. The Prime Minister arrived an hour ago, unannounced, traveling from London specifically to discuss what he's calling the Montgomery situation. Churchill looks exhausted. The war has aged him visibly, the jowls heavier, the shoulders more stooped. But his eyes are sharp, and right now, they're fixed on Eisenhower with an intensity that makes four-star generals uncomfortable. You understand my position, Churchill says, cigar smoke wreathing his words. Montgomery is Britain's most successful field commander. The victor of El Alamein. The man who drove the Germans from Africa and Sicily. I cannot publicly repudiate him without damaging British prestige. I understand, Prime Minister. But. Churchill pauses, drawing on the cigar. His press conference was catastrophically stupid. It has endangered everything we've worked to build, the partnership between our nations, the unity of command, the trust between our forces. Eisenhower says nothing. He's learned that with Churchill, you let the man talk until he reaches his conclusion. The American press is baying for blood, Churchill continues. Your Congress is asking questions. I'm receiving cables from Washington suggesting that perhaps Montgomery should be relieved entirely. Not just from American command, from all command. I'm not asking for that, Prime Minister. I know you're not, Eisenhower. Which is why I'm here. Because you're trying to hold this alliance together despite Montgomery's best efforts to tear it apart, and I need you to know that Britain supports you in whatever decision you make. Eisenhower looks at Churchill carefully. Whatever decision? If you need to remove 1st and Ninth Armies from Montgomery's command, do it. I'll support you publicly. I'll make it clear that the command arrangement was always temporary, that American forces have performed magnificently, and that Montgomery's comments do not reflect British appreciation for American sacrifices. This is more than Eisenhower expected. Much more. Prime Minister, I appreciate, I'm not finished. Churchill leans forward. Montgomery believes he should command all Allied ground forces for the drive into Germany. He's been lobbying for it since Normandy. He thinks the command arrangement you implemented during the Bulge validates that position. It doesn't. I know it doesn't. You know it doesn't. Now you need to make sure Montgomery knows it doesn't. Eisenhower stands, walks to his map. The Bulge is nearly closed. American forces from north and south are linking up. The German offensive is finished, crushed not by British tactical brilliance but by American resilience and counterattacking aggression. I'm returning 1st and Ninth Armies to Bradley's command, Eisenhower says quietly. Effective February 1st. That soon? The tactical situation no longer requires unified command in the north. The Germans are in full retreat. Communication lines are restored. There's no military justification for continuing the arrangement. Montgomery will object. Montgomery will follow orders. Churchill studies Eisenhower's face. The usually diplomatic general, the man who spent 2 years smoothing over Allied disagreements, looks like he's reached the end of his patience. What if he refuses? Churchill asks. What if he takes this to the press again? Makes it a public confrontation? Eisenhower turns from the map. His voice is steel underneath velvet. Then I'll relieve him. Not from American command, from all command. And I'll request that the combined chiefs assign a replacement. If Montgomery wants to make this a test of authority, he's going to lose. Churchill nods slowly. I'll inform the War Cabinet. You have Britain's full support. After Churchill leaves, Eisenhower sits alone in his office. He's just committed to a confrontation with the most famous British general of the war. A confrontation that could split the alliance if handled badly. But he can't let Montgomery's arrogance undermine American forces. Can't let political considerations override military necessity. Can't reward bad behavior with permanent command of armies he's publicly insulted. His chief of staff, Bedell Smith, enters. Sir, Montgomery's requested a meeting. He wants to discuss future command arrangements. Of course he does. Schedule it for tomorrow. Here. And make sure it's completely private, no staff officers, no notes. Just Montgomery and me. Yes, sir. And Bedell? Draft orders returning 1st and 9th Armies to 12th Army Group Command effective February 1st. Have them ready for my signature. Smith pauses. Sir, shouldn't we wait until after you meet with Montgomery? No. Because I'm not negotiating. I'm informing him of a decision already made. January 17, 1945. 0900 hours. SHAEF headquarters. Montgomery arrives precisely on time, impeccably uniformed, carrying a leather folder that probably contains his arguments for permanent command of American armies that he's not going to need it. Eisenhower greets him cordially, offers coffee, gestures to a chair. The pleasantries are brief. Both men know why they're here. Montgomery opens his folder. I've prepared some thoughts on command structure for the final offensive into Germany. I believe the success we've achieved in the North demonstrates the value of unified command under a single. Bernard. Eisenhower's voice is quiet. But something in his tone makes Montgomery stop mid-sentence. First and Ninth Armies are returning to Bradley's command. Effective February 1st. Silence. Montgomery blinks. That's rather precipitous, isn't it? We're still conducting operations in the North. The situation isn't fully stabilized. The situation is completely stabilized. The German offensive is finished. The tactical justification for the command arrangement no longer exists. I would argue that the command arrangement should continue based on its demonstrated effectiveness. Bernard. Eisenhower leans forward. Let me be very clear. The command arrangement was a temporary emergency measure. It was never intended to be permanent. And your press conference, where you claimed credit for saving American armies and suggested their commanders were inadequate, has made it politically impossible to continue even if I wanted to. Montgomery's face tightens. I simply reported the facts of the situation. You insulted American forces and their commanders in front of international press. You demanded permanent command of armies you have no right to command. And you've endangered the alliance I've spent 2 years building. That's hardly, I'm not finished. Eisenhower's voice is sharper now. You've lobbied for overall ground command since Normandy. You've questioned my decisions. You've gone around proper channels to press your case with Churchill and the British chiefs. I've tolerated it because you're a talented commander and because Allied unity requires accommodation. He stands, walks to the window. But there are limits to accommodation, Bernard. And you've reached them. First and Ninth Armies return to American command February 1st. That decision is final. If you can't accept it, if you feel you cannot serve under these arrangements, I will accept your resignation and request a replacement. The room is absolutely silent. Montgomery has just been threatened with relief. Not subtly. Not diplomatically. Directly. He processes this for several seconds. You would relieve me over a command disagreement? I would relieve you for insubordination and for publicly undermining Allied unity. But it won't come to that, will it? Because you're going to accept this decision, return to your command, and focus on destroying the German forces in your sector. Montgomery carefully closes his folder. I see. Do you? I believe I do. Montgomery's voice is stiff, formal. If that's your decision, then naturally I'll comply. It is my decision. And Bernard? Eisenhower turns from the window. If you hold another press conference without clearing it through SHAEF first, if you make any more public statements about American competence or British superiority, if you do anything else that damages Allied unity, I won't warn you again. I'll simply relieve you. Am I clear? Perfectly clear. Montgomery leaves 10 minutes later. Eisenhower watches him go, knowing he's just made an enemy of Britain's most famous general. But he's also preserved American command integrity and maintained the alliance. Sometimes the diplomatic choice and the military choice aren't the same thing. Today, Eisenhower chose military necessity over diplomatic comfort. And Montgomery is about to learn that Supreme Commander isn't just a title. It's actual authority. February 1st, 1945. 0800 hours. 12th Army Group Headquarters, Namur, Belgium. General Omar Bradley stands in his operations room watching staff officers update the situation map. The markers are moving again. American markers. Back under American command. The U.S. First Army, returned from Montgomery's control at 0001 hours this morning, is already pushing toward the Rhine. The U.S. Ninth Army follows the same trajectory, aggressive, mobile, attacking. Bradley's operations officer, Brigadier General Truman Thorson, approaches with the morning intelligence summary. Sir, First Army reports they've advanced 8 miles since midnight. Ninth Army is maintaining pace. The Germans are conducting a fighting withdrawal, but they're not holding anywhere. Bradley nods. 8 miles in 8 hours. Under Montgomery, they'd still be consolidating defensive positions and planning the advance with proper British caution. What's Montgomery's reaction? Bradley asks. 21st Army Group issued a terse statement acknowledging the command change. Nothing else. Nothing else. Because there's nothing Montgomery can say. Eisenhower didn't negotiate. Didn't compromise. Just issued the order and expected compliance. And Montgomery, for all his arrogance, is still a professional soldier. When given a direct order by his supreme commander, he followed it. George Patton enters the operations room, grinning like a predator who's just spotted wounded prey. Brad, I assume you've seen the morning reports? 1st and 9th are back under 12th Army Group command. I know that. I mean, have you seen what they accomplished in their first 8 hours of freedom? 8 miles. Aggressive maneuver. Combined arms coordination. Everything Montgomery said we couldn't do without British supervision. Bradley allows himself a small smile. George, let's not gloat. Why the hell not? Montgomery spent 3 weeks telling the world we needed British nannies to fight effectively. Now we're proving he was full of shit. I call that worth celebrating. We still need to work with 21st Army Group. We need to work alongside them. We don't need to work under them. There's a difference. Patton moves to the map, studying the advance trajectories. How long until First Army reaches the Rhine? 3 weeks, assuming current pace. Make it 2. I want us across the Rhine before Montgomery finishes planning his first river crossing. I want photographs of American troops on the East Bank before Montgomery's engineers have finished their pontoon bridge calculations. Bradley knows what Patton is doing. This isn't just about military objectives anymore. It's about vindication. About proving that American commanders and American methods can win battles without British direction. George, Eisenhower wants unity of effort. And he'll get it. We'll coordinate with 21st Army Group. Share intelligence. Support their operations. But we're going to do it as equals, Brad. Not as students being graded by British schoolmasters. He's not wrong. The entire American command structure is operating with renewed energy now that they're free from Montgomery's control. Not because Montgomery was incompetent, he wasn't. But because American commanders resented being subordinated to British authority, resented the implication that they needed supervision. Patton starts toward the door, then pauses. You know what the best part of this is? What? Montgomery actually did us a favor with that press conference. He made it impossible for Ike to leave us under British command without looking weak. He forced the confrontation. And he lost. After Patton leaves, Bradley stands alone at the map. The American armies are advancing. The Germans are retreating. The Rhine is weeks away. And Montgomery, brilliant, arrogant, politically tone-deaf Montgomery, has learned that superior technology doesn't matter if you can't deploy it effectively. Wait. Wrong metaphor. Montgomery has learned that military talent doesn't matter if you can't work within an alliance structure. The British Field Marshal wanted overall command. Wanted permanent authority over American forces. Wanted validation of his belief that British methods were superior, Instead, he got a temporary assignment that lasted 6 weeks, a public rebuke from his own prime minister, and a direct threat of relief from the supreme commander. Bradley wonders if Montgomery understands the lesson. Probably not, but it doesn't matter anymore. The American armies are back where they belong. And the drive into Germany is going to be an American show. Simultaneously. 21st Army Group Headquarters. Montgomery sits in his command caravan, reading after-action reports from the American sectors. His face is expressionless. Professional. But inside, he's seething. Francis de Gingand enters quietly. "Sir, the morning intelligence summary." Montgomery takes it without comment. Reads it. Sets it down. "The Americans are advancing rapidly," de Gingand observes carefully. "They're taking risks. Outrunning their logistics. Creating vulnerabilities. Perhaps, sir. But they're also gaining ground." Montgomery doesn't respond. What can he say? That American methods are reckless? He's already said that. That they need British supervision? Eisenhower's made clear that's never happening again. "Sir," de Gingand continues, "I've received a message from SHAF. General Eisenhower requests full coordination between 21st Army Group and 12th Army Group for the Rhine crossing operations." Of course he does. "Sir, I think this is an opportunity. We can demonstrate that British and American forces work effectively together as equals. We can, as equals." Montgomery's voice is bitter. 6 weeks ago, I commanded 300,000 American troops. I coordinated the northern response to the German offensive. I imposed order on chaos. And now I'm being told to coordinate, as an equal with commanders who were under my authority a month ago. De Gingand chooses his words carefully. "Sir, with respect, you never actually commanded those troops. You had operational control during an emergency. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes, sir. And the difference matters. To the Americans. To the alliance. To General Eisenhower." Montgomery stands abruptly. The Americans are emotional. They confuse professional assessment with personal insult. I stated facts about their dispositions in the Ardennes. Facts about command coordination. Facts about tactical methodology. And they responded by demanding I be relieved. "Sir, you claimed credit for saving their armies. I claimed credit for imposing proper command discipline at a critical moment." Which is accurate. De Gingand realizes this conversation is pointless. Montgomery genuinely doesn't understand what he did wrong. Doesn't see that claiming credit for someone else's victory, even if technically accurate, is politically catastrophic. "Sir, General Eisenhower has made his decision. 1st and 9th Armies are back under American command. That's not changing. The question now is how we move forward. We move forward by conducting operations in our sector with British forces under British command. Which is all I should have been responsible for in the first place. It's a retreat. A face-saving rationalization. But it's also an acceptance of reality." Montgomery wanted overall ground command. He's not getting it. He wanted permanent control of American armies. He's not getting that either. What he's getting is command of British and Canadian forces for the northern approach to Germany. Important. Significant. But not what he wanted. "Draft a message to SHAF," Montgomery says finally. "Acknowledge receipt of the coordination request. Inform them that 21st Army Group stands ready to support Allied operations as part of the overall strategic plan." Professional. Correct. Completely lacking the triumphalism of 3 weeks ago. De Gingand drafts the message, knowing that Montgomery has just conceded the argument. The British Field Marshal will remain in command of 21st Army Group. He'll coordinate with American forces. He'll conduct his operations professionally. But he'll do it as one commander among equals, not as the supreme ground commander he believed he should be. Eisenhower won this confrontation, not through dramatic gestures. Not through public humiliation. But through quiet, firm insistence that command authority means something, that Allied unity requires mutual respect, and that talent doesn't excuse insubordination. Montgomery learned the lesson. Whether he accepted it is another question entirely. March 7, 1945. 1,550 hours. Ludendorff Bridge, Remagen, Germany. First Lieutenant Karl Timmerman of the U.S. 27th Armored Infantry Battalion is running across a railroad bridge over the Rhine River while German engineers frantically try to blow it up. The bridge is wired with demolition charges. German troops are firing from the far side. The entire structure is shaking from failed detonation attempts. Timmerman keeps running. Behind him, more American soldiers from the Ninth Armored Division are pouring across. This wasn't planned. This wasn't part of any grand strategy. An American reconnaissance unit stumbled onto the last intact bridge over the Rhine, and they're seizing it before the Germans can destroy it. By 1600 hours, American forces have established a bridgehead on the east bank of the Rhine. The Americans have crossed the greatest river barrier in Western Europe. Not through careful planning. Not through methodical preparation. Through aggressive exploitation of an unexpected opportunity, exactly the kind of operation Montgomery warned against. Exactly the kind of risk-taking he said would lead to disaster. And it's just handed the Allies the breakthrough they need. March 8, 1945. CHAEF Headquarters, Versailles. When Eisenhower receives the report about Remagen, he immediately recognizes the significance. The Rhine crossing was supposed to be a massive, coordinated operation. Montgomery was planning an elaborate set-piece assault for late March, Operation Plunder, with massive air support, extensive artillery preparation, and overwhelming force. Now the Americans have a bridge. And a bridgehead. And momentum. Eisenhower orders reinforcements rush to Remagen. Hold the bridge. Expand the bridgehead. Exploit the opportunity. It's aggressive. It's opportunistic. It's everything Montgomery said American commanders shouldn't do. And it's going to shorten the war. Bradley calls from 12th Army Group. Ike, we've got 8 divisions moving toward Remagen. If we can expand this bridgehead, we can bypass Montgomery's entire Rhine crossing operation. Do it. Get across the river in strength. I want every available unit pushing through that breach. What about coordination with 21st Army Group? Montgomery proceeds with plunder as planned. But we're not waiting for him. If 1st Army can get across the Rhine now, we're going. It's the philosophy that's guided American operations since Normandy. Aggressive maneuver. Exploitation of opportunity. Speed over methodical preparation. The philosophy Montgomery criticized. The approach he said would lead to disaster. Instead, it's leading to victory. March 23, 1945. 2,100 hours. The Rhine River, northern Germany. Montgomery finally launches Operation Plunder, his massive, carefully planned Rhine crossing. It's everything he promised. Overwhelming force. Massive artillery preparation. Airborne assault. Engineer units with prefabricated bridges. The full application of British methodical warfare. It's also 2 weeks after the Americans crossed at Remagen. By the time Montgomery's forces reach the East Bank, American units are already 20 miles beyond the Rhine, driving toward the Ruhr industrial region. The operation is technically successful. British and Canadian forces establish a strong bridgehead. The casualties are manageable. The objectives are achieved. But the glory is gone. The headlines belong to the Americans who crossed 2 weeks earlier. The strategic initiative belongs to armies that didn't wait for perfect conditions. Montgomery issues a congratulatory order to his troops. Professional. Gracious. making no reference to the Americans who beat him across. But everyone understands the symbolism. The careful, methodical approach, the one Montgomery championed, has been overtaken by American aggressive opportunism, not because American methods are inherently superior, but because in war, timing matters as much as technique. And sometimes the aggressive choice, even with its risks, achieves results the cautious choice never could. April 15, 1945. SHAEF Headquarters. The war in Europe is entering its final weeks. German resistance is collapsing. Allied armies are driving deep into Germany from every direction. Eisenhower sits in his office, reviewing the disposition of forces for the final operations. American armies are approaching the Elbe River. British forces are driving toward Hamburg. The Soviets are closing on Berlin from the east. It's taken coordination, compromise, and careful management of competing egos. But the alliance has held together. Bedell Smith enters with a message. Sir, Montgomery's requesting permission to drive on Berlin ahead of the Soviets. Of course he is. Tell Montgomery that Berlin is in the Soviet zone of occupation as agreed at Yalta. We're not racing the Russians for symbolic objectives. We're finishing the destruction of German military forces. He won't like that answer. He doesn't have to like it. He has to follow it. Smith pauses. Sir, there's something else. The British press is running retrospectives on the war. Several articles are discussing the Bulge and the command arrangements from January. And Montgomery's being criticized. British journalists are saying his press conference damaged Anglo-American relations unnecessarily. That his behavior nearly fractured the alliance at a critical moment. Eisenhower says nothing. He takes no satisfaction in Montgomery's public criticism. The British Field Marshal is a talented commander who made a catastrophic political mistake. But he's still part of the team that's about to win this war. Draft a statement, Eisenhower says quietly. Make it clear that Field Marshal Montgomery commanded with distinction throughout the campaign. That the temporary command arrangements during the Bulge were militarily sound. That British and American forces worked together effectively to defeat the German offensive. Sir, after what he said about American forces. I don't care what he said. The war is almost over. When it ends, I want the historical record to show Allied unity, not Allied bickering. Montgomery made mistakes. So did I. So did everyone. But we won. That's what matters. Smith nods, understanding Eisenhower could destroy Montgomery's reputation if he wanted. Could leak the details of their January confrontation. Could highlight every political misstep, but he won't. Because he's not interested in vindication. He's interested in victory and in preserving the alliance that achieved it. That's the difference between a field commander and a supreme commander. Field commanders win battles. Supreme commanders win wars while keeping coalitions together. Montgomery never understood that distinction. Eisenhower lived it every day. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe. Germany surrenders unconditionally. The war that began in September 1939 ends 6 years later with Allied forces occupying German territory from the Rhine to the Elbe, from Denmark to Austria. British forces. American forces. Canadian, French, Polish, and soldiers from a dozen other nations. They won together. Despite competing egos. Despite national rivalries. Despite commanders who sometimes confused personal glory with military necessity. The story of Montgomery's 60 days commanding American armies becomes a footnote. Interesting. Controversial. But ultimately insignificant compared to the larger achievement. Eisenhower's diplomatic management of that crisis, his quiet, firm insistence on Allied unity and proper command authority, prevents the alliance from fracturing at a critical moment. Montgomery's talent as a battlefield commander remains undeniable. His political tone-deafness becomes legendary. And the lesson, that wars are won by alliances, not just by talented generals, echoes through military history. In late May, Eisenhower meets with Montgomery one final time before returning to the United States. The conversation is professional, cordial. They discuss the occupation zones, the demobilization plans, the post-war military structure. Neither mentions January 1945. Neither references the press conference or the confrontation or the threat of relief. But both men remember Montgomery because it was the moment he learned that talent doesn't exempt you from the chain of command. Eisenhower because it was the moment he proved that Supreme Commander isn't just a title, it's actual authority backed by the willingness to use it. When Montgomery leaves, Eisenhower stands alone in his office one last time. He thinks about the decisions he's made, the compromises he's accepted, the confrontations he couldn't avoid. The war is over. The alliance held. American and British forces fought together to destroy Nazi Germany. That's the only legacy that matters, not who commanded whom. Not who got credit. Not which national approach proved superior. Just that they won, together. The aftermath of Montgomery's 60 days commanding American armies shaped post-war military doctrine in ways neither commander anticipated. NATO's command structure, created 4 years later, explicitly prevents any single nation from commanding another nation's forces without clear, sustained political authorization. The temporary expedient that nearly fractured the Anglo-American alliance in 1945 becomes the cautionary tale that shapes Allied military cooperation for the next 70 years. Montgomery continues his military career, eventually becoming Chief of the Imperial General Staff and Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe during NATO's early years. He never publicly acknowledges that his January 1945 press conference was a mistake. Eisenhower becomes President of the United States. Throughout his political career, he emphasizes the importance of international cooperation, alliance management, and subordinating individual ego to collective objectives. His presidential doctrine reflects lessons learned managing Montgomery, Patton, and the complex personalities that won World War II. The American commanders who resented British supervision in January 1945, Bradley, Patton, and their subordinates, become the architects of post-war U.S. military doctrine. Their approach emphasizes aggressive maneuver, decentralized command, and rapid exploitation of opportunities over methodical preparation. The tension between these philosophies, British caution versus American aggression, methodical planning versus opportunistic exploitation, continues to shape military debate for decades, but the fundamental lesson of January 1945 remains clear. In coalition warfare, political wisdom matters as much as tactical brilliance. Command authority means nothing without the judgment to exercise it properly. And talent, no matter how genuine, doesn't exempt anyone from the chain of command. Montgomery learned it the hard way, Eisenhower taught it perfectly, and the alliance that nearly fractured over competing egos held together long enough to win the greatest war in human history. And if you haven't already, subscribe to WWII Battlefields and turn on notifications. We are dedicated to rescuing stories like Eisenhower and Montgomery's January confrontation from the dusty footnotes of history. Every week, we dive into the archives to bring you tales of impossible courage, tactical brilliance, and ordinary men who did extraordinary things on the battlefields of World War II. Now, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us. Where are you watching from today? Did someone in your family serve under Eisenhower or Montgomery during the war? Just let us know you're here. You're not just a viewer, you're part of the community keeping the memory of these warriors alive. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering.